Hey everyone, welcome to this Monday night edition of Run Pure Sports College Basketball Stream. This is for the Tuesday night, January 11th slate, the first kind of big one post college football. We wanted to get a show out for you guys. We are live on YouTube right now. I'm joined, as always, by my friend Gavin. What's going on, Gav?
What's going on? Yeah, first big slate of the year. We don't have to fight over a bunch of pebbles. There's some real money on the line here and lots of good games, too, as we start to kind of get into the thick of conference play. So excited to jump in here.
Yeah, same. We've got our first qualifiers. There's a 4-4-4 tournament tomorrow. There's a big 15 with 10,000 to first, which the payout structure was a bit better, but you know, what can you do? We've got 11 games, I think. It was supposed to be 12, but the Michigan Purdue game got bagged. Since we have so many, let's dive right into it. Gavin, we'll start with Kentucky at Vandy. The particulars here. I've got Kentucky 74-67 on KenPom. Kentucky 10th in the KenPom rankings. Vandy 73rd. I'll let you talk first about this game. Just kind of overall thoughts.
Yeah, 140 total. Kentucky's favored by 6. Total's already gone up 2 points in the couple hours it's been open, and Kentucky's taken a tiny bit of money. A little bit of an interesting spot. Vandy's got kind of a weird schedule. They're 159th in strength of schedule, but they played 0 teams outside the KenPom top 100. But they haven't played a ton of tough teams. So, we have a pretty good sample of Vandy. A less than thrilling performance against South Carolina last game, although they kind of clawed and scraped their way back to it. But kind of tough matchup in terms of what Kentucky is looking to do and how Vandy defends it. Don't need to get into too many particulars when we're talking about the more macro section, but happy to pass it back over to you.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting spot. We were on a couple of Vandy guys on Saturday. Scotty really played poorly, turned the ball over a ton. I think this is a tough spot for them. Kentucky's just really good defensively. They're 12th in defensive effective field goal percentage. They bounced back nicely in that Georgia game on Saturday after the road LSU loss. They're just so dominant on the glass. I think they're third in offensive rebound percentage, 9th in defensive. So, no second chance points for Vandy. Vandy kind of thrives by turning you over. And Kentucky, especially with Ty running point with severe hurt, I think is going to play well here. He had an awesome game on Saturday with his 17 assists. The one thing I'll note, Gavin, is Vandy forces you to shoot a ton of threes. They're top 50 in opponents' three-point attempts per field goal attempt. And that's kind of Kentucky's weakness. That's been their weakness for a couple of years now, is shooting from beyond the arc. Any thoughts there before we dive into the plays?
Yeah, they're 148. They got a couple guys that can shoot it. I mean, certainly better than last year, which was just as bad of a shooting team as you could have imagined. But at some point, sometimes it just comes down to the Jimmies and the Joes who are playing. Kentucky 37th in shot making, Vanderbilt 322nd. Kentucky 32nd in rim plus 3-point per possession, Vanderbilt 289th. So you got pretty big discrepancies there. And Kentucky, even though they're only kind of 109th in tempo and 52nd in average possession length, they actually have the highest frequency of plays occurring in transition on the offensive end at 26%. And Vandy's defense is 263rd defending transition at 1.04 points per possession. So Kentucky's going to have a couple advantages in terms of what they're looking to run. A little bit of a tough matchup for Vandy. Vandy really wants to keep things in kind of the low 60s. Possessions. They played a couple of fast ones recently against Arkansas and South Carolina, but we've seen Kentucky flex tempo, low 60 possessions. They've had a couple of mid 70s. I expect Vandy to slow this thing down at home, probably expect low to mid 60 possessions, be a little bit more of a grinder, but still got some pretty decent plays in this game available.
Yeah, so moving on to DFS, we saw without Severe in there, Coach Cal really condensed the minutes, right? We saw Oscar play 38, Ty played 37, Grady 39, Brooks 30, and Mintz 30, and he pretty much cut everyone else out. He cut out Collins. Toppin only played 17 without foul trouble. Allen didn't play. Ware played a minute. Um, so, yeah, I think Oscar at 9.5, if we find some savings that we like, I think he's a great play here. Vandy's got Malora Brown inside, but not really concerned about him. Oscar with a 36% rebound rate last three and 20% shot rate, just was completely dominant in that game on Saturday. I would expect nothing less here. Want your thoughts on Ty coming off the huge game? His price actually comes down. Like I said, played 37 minutes, 17 assists last game. What do you think?
Yeah, 8-2. You're giving up some, and I can't imagine that he replicates 17 assists, but I think it more goes to show you how much the ball is going to be in his hands, really, without Severe. So he's got to be at least in consideration a good GPP piece when you can potentially have a guard, with that kind of upside, even with not only shot volume and assists, but some rebounding as well. He's in the mix, but once you start getting into the 8K guys, you're starting to talk about some of the premier pieces on the slate, and so probably a little bit more of a GPP mix in, given kind of game total and environment for me.
Yeah, I think I like him more than you. Obviously not expecting a crazy assist game like that, but if he's going to have the ball in his hands as much as he did, I think Vandy's a decent soft landing spot. Not like Georgia was, obviously, but I think he's squarely in play. I think two tournament guys in the mid range. You got Grady, who, like I said, played 39 last game. He's got basically a 20% shot rate and does nothing else. So he's a bit overpriced for me, but you've got a guy playing the entire game, 75-ish team total. I could see him as a play. I mean, I played him at 6K in that evening slate on Saturday, and then Keon at 6.3. Good to see his minutes bump up to 30 last game. As we know, he's always a volatile piece, but I expect him to play well, so I'm okay with him. The guy who I think is going to be popular, Mintz, stepped into 30 minutes here with Severe out. Looks to be a real nice value at 4.4. He has a good shot rate. Was obviously their point guard for a lot of the season last year. Anything else there on Kentucky before we move on to Vandy, Gavin?
No, I think Mintz is pretty clearly the easiest play. You kind of worry about, like, last game, it took him going 7 of 10 from the field, 5 of 7 from 3 to get value. Or I guess, he was over 5x, but 2 assists, no other peripherals, kind of makes you worry a little bit, but kind of similar to Ty. I think both provide extremely good floors at their price points for the guard spot.
Yep, agreed. Moving on to Vandy, I think both of us played Scotty on that main slate on Saturday. Super disappointing game. Turned it over, 5+ times at least. It felt like more than that. 24% shot rate last three, 32% assist rate. So the usage is still there, playing mid-30s minutes. I just, with the return of Man, it seemed like Man was taking enough usage away from him, and this is a tough matchup. Scotty scores a lot at the rim, and Kentucky's obviously tough inside. What do you think about him, and then any other Vandy pieces for you?
Yeah, I don't know if this is the spot. We had kind of the relatively nut matchup in terms of South Carolina being tough on the interior and being relatively fast paced. Kentucky is going to be even longer on the perimeter without little baby midget Severe Wheeler. So it's just going to be even tougher for him to get kind of those easy back down scores that he relies on. So I don't think in this scenario he comes into consideration. But Studi, if he until he misses, we have to at least consider him. But you're right in that just Man coming back, I think, kind of lower Scotty's floor a little bit to the point of where he's not really of great interest, I think, on this slate.
Yeah, the note I had here was man coming out kind of takes a little bit of the air out of Miles. I think it reduces his minute ceiling, which is kind of what we wanted, right? Like him out there as long as he can, just so he could get his threes up. So I think man kind of kills everything else. I guess you could look at Melora Brown. He's at 4.6. He battled foul trouble last game, or else I think he probably pushes 28, 30 minutes. But again, the matchup with Oscar is not something I want to run into, especially with one team. So I think to recap on this game, Oscar is obviously a great play if you can afford him. I have a little more interest in Ty than Gavin on a main team, even though I think he does like him overall. And then Mint's probably the most popular play from this game. Might be tough to get away from, honestly, at 4-4. Moving on, we got Texas Tech and Baylor. Ken Palm's got it. Baylor 74-63. Texas Tech 18th at Ken Palm. Baylor number 1 at Ken Palm. What do you got for overall thoughts here, Gavin?
Yeah, it's another interesting one because this is going to be heavily predicated on news. I don't know. I don't think we've had a McCullough ruling yet. I don't imagine Terry Shannon coming back for Tech, but having McCullough or not having him certainly kind of swings things not only from an ATS and betting perspective, but DFS. I mean, you got two of the best defenses in the country. I think 2 of the top 7. Texas Tech, especially shorthanded, is going to try to slow you down as much as possible. 308th in tempo, 268th in average offensive possession length. But 15th in defensive turnover percentage, so turning over opponents, and 9th in offensive rebounding rate. Kind of keeps them in these games where they might be outgunned from a talent and physicality standpoint, but can still generate some cheap buckets to stop runs from teams getting out on them. But one thing to know kind of Texas Tech, that no middle offense that Mark Adams was the main chef for Chris Beard, who looks like he needs him more. But, Texas Tech 356th in defensive 3-point rate. So they're allowing pretty much the highest 3-point rate of any team in the country. Also, if you can imagine, number 1 in lowest near proximity field goal rate on the defensive end. So they're going to make Baylor shoot, who's 37th in 3-point percentage. So they certainly got not only the statistics to back it up, but certainly a couple of guys that can definitely shoot it from outside. And Baylor's a different beast at home, man. We saw the slow start against TCU where Mike Miles was just heroing them, TCU, for the first probably 25, 30 minutes of the game, and then Baylor took over. So, yeah, really interesting game. Definitely got to keep an eye out for Kevin McCullough news.
Yeah, I don't think he's going to play here. I saw him on Saturday at the game. He did have a boot on, so I'm not sure if he comes back. Like you said, Texas Tech's coming off a huge home win against Kansas. And yeah, so you mentioned that they forced you to shoot a ton of threes. I think Baylor's shooting 44.8% from 3 in conference play. That's pretty good. The last couple games, they've been, you've been able to get them inside. I don't think that that's going to continue. So those are kind of the particulars for the game. As far as DFS, the thing here, Gavin, is that Texas Tech, their entire rotation is pretty condensed without Shannon and McCullough, and they're all cheap here. Do you have a favorite player or two on Texas Tech?
Yeah, I think Nadolny probably provides you the best floor of all those guys, given minutes, shot volume, and then basically he's got to fall into a couple peripherals. Now, he's relied on 10 assists in his last 3 games, which has certainly kind of helped buoy his stats in some of those. But we saw a pretty good shot volume against Kansas. I think he's probably the safest of those value guys. And then, boy, they're just daring us to play Marcus Santos Silva at 3.3K. I mean, yeah, he's got an absurd foul rate, but I mean, with the size that Baylor's going to have on the interior, they're going to have to play him a little bit, at least until he fouls. And, his rates are pretty good when he's in the game, at least for the most part. But when you start moving up, Arms is more of a minutes and peripheral guy without shot volume. Warren is kind of similar of Nadolny, but 800 more. And then I don't know if I get to O'Banner or Bryce Williams. I mean, so be it. If they really beat Baylor at those prices, then that's fine with me. But I don't know, priced up at this point. Bryson Williams had kind of a ceiling game against KU, but I don't know.
Yeah, you're also staring at like a 61-ish team total here. I think it's pick a piece off of Texas Tech, even with the short rotation. This is a pretty big slate. I'm with you. Nadolny looked pretty good over the weekend. He's a bit scoring reliant, like you said, but at 4-2, I think he's going to be a real good value on the slate. Arms, I think, is definitely in play as well. He's played 40 and 33 minutes the last two games with Shannon and McCullough being out. 23% assist rate. You said his peripherals are nice. That checks out there. Frustrating that they're not using O'Banner more. I mean, what a stud at Oral Roberts last year. Was the hero for us in DFS and during the tournament. Transfers to a school, where he's basically like the fourth option. So that's pretty frustrating. Warren's there at 5K. He's going to give you 30 minutes and shoot it. His 18% shot rate last three, but is going to give you nothing peripherally. So that's tough. And then I'm with you on Williams. I don't think I'm spending 6K for a piece going at Baylor in a clear letdown spot after the Kansas game. The Baylor side, we got news this afternoon, Gavin, that Sohan is going to miss this game. What does that do for you? And talk to me a bit about Baylor real quick.
So I think what it does is it probably gives someone, as much as I hate to say it, like Matt Mayer and Kendall Brown probably see a little bit of an uptick, because I think they just kind of rotate out Chamo Achachua and Flo Thamba at the 5, kind of play a mix of Mayer and Kendall Brown at the 3 and the 4, and then run their kind of other guards. 6'5" still for Mayer, even with an uptick in minutes, like he's been less than impressive and more of a rebounder and facilitator like on this team than an actual like go to the basket scorer. Akinjo gives you great floor, but I think I want to be interested in Kendall Brown, someone who has kind of the explosiveness at 5.9K where, he could put up 20, 25 real points. Baylor's got, I think they're at like 76 for a team total, 73 and a half. So, does he put up a third of their points? Probably not, but yeah, it's kind of interesting. I think just Texas Tech just makes this game just disgusting all around. So I still don't know if I get to any Baylor guys.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Baylor to me has kind of been the poster child for having too many good players, right? They're all good, so they're priced kind of where they would be if they were, the number 1 or 2 option on the team. But this team has so much talent and is so deep that they, outside of Akinjo and Flagler, they kind of rotate who's going to be that third guy on a game-to-game basis. It could be Brown, it could be Cryer, it could be Mayer. But I think there are some plays here, maybe not for a main team, Gavin, but Akinjo, man, he has been awesome of late, especially in conference play. Shot rate up to almost 25% last 3 with a 40% assist rate. Played 37 minutes in back-to-back games. Flagler has really impressed me. Since he missed a couple games early, he's played 33 plus in 3 straight. Shot rate up to 22% with good peripherals. So I think Flagler and Akinjo are pretty interesting tournament options. Like you said, the only concern is that Texas Tech just tries to slow this down. But I do think that Baylor at home is going to be able to control the pace a little bit better. I'm interested in Brown at 5'9", hoping that those minutes kind of go to him. But that kind of takes some projection. We kind of saw him explode earlier in the season, and since then he's taken a back seat since Flagler and Cryer have come back. So I don't think that he's going to project well. I think, man, he's probably a lottery pick talent who's going to step into a larger role in this game where we expect him to play pretty well. Cryer is your cheap GPP shooter. He's not going to do anything else besides shoot, but should see 25 to 28 minutes here.
Yeah, it just feels like a lower floor Davian Mintz with less minutes, frankly.
Yeah. So I think these are all, not main team options, but I think that there are 3-4 guys that you can consider, in the 15 tomorrow. If you're playing a bunch of lineups, I think there are 3-4 guys that could definitely get there for Baylor. All right, let's move on. Next is DePaul at Marquette. This should be a fun game. Ken Palm's got it Marquette 80-72. DePaul's 107th at Ken Palm. Marquette is 51st at Ken Palm. What do you got overall for this game, Gavin?
Yeah, it's one of the better games on the slate. 149.5 total. Marquette favored by 7. Now, we saw Marquette take some money from -6 all the way up to sounds like some -8.5s peaked out. But we saw the resistance there. It's come back down to 7. Probably rest there, for a good minute. Marquette, 2 just gargantuan wins in a row. They club Providence by 32, and they club Georgetown by 28, minus Donald Carey, but still. Since the 2 overtime, Creighton game, when Marquette was without Cam Jones, they started playing a lot more 2 big lineups where you had 2 of Kerkhoff, Omax Prosper, and Iguodaro in there. They were kind of forced to, versus Creighton in their size, and now they're coming off their 2 best kind of performances of the season by far. So they've had really good success with that against a DePaul team that's going to have a distinct advantage against them, not only in the rebounding department, but in the defensive interior department as well. You have 2 teams inside the top 50 in tempo. So it's definitely a game that we're going to have to take a good hard look at for the DFS side. You're muted, Mutt.
I hit the wrong button. Just some quick notes on the DePaul side. I agree with you with Marquette. I think them, this switch in their season has come pretty much directly aligning with that change in their starting 5. DePaul, they're 0-4 in Big East play after the hot start to the season. They're outside the top 100 in defensive effective field goal percentage. They are a bit stronger defensively inside the arc, 53rd in defensive 2-point percentage. They've given up 45.5% from 3 in their 4 conference games. So the Marquette shooters here, just a green light spot. You mentioned the 2 ass kickings from Marquette in the last few games. One change, along with them just playing better overall, is that in Big East play, they're first in defensive 2-point percentage. So going to that larger overall 5, I think has helped that. So they're just not a sieve inside. Early in the season, you could score on them a lot easier. So that's where we're at just for overall thoughts. For DFS wise, you've got JFL at 9-2 coming off the good game. Well, at least good first half against Nova on Saturday. But we're kind of seeing the peripherals come back to earth a bit, Gavin, as we kind of expected. Why don't you talk about DePaul a bit here?
Yeah, just real quick, kind of. I guess I'll start with DePaul, but Haslam has a momentum metric in terms of how teams are playing over the last couple games, and you got DePaul at 352nd in that metric, and Marquette at 9th. You got 2 teams just heading in complete opposite directions. But you're mentioning, Marquette at the rim. They're allowing the 328th highest defensive near proximity percentage in the nation. So teams are getting to the rim on them, which makes sense with running that kind of press heavy, chaotic, dependent defense. And on the season, they're 330th in offensive rebound rate, but the last 2 games, they've both been above 40% in that regard. So, I mean, they could not be hotter and steamier from the market perspective. But you got both teams outside the top 250 in consistency. So it's a tough place to bet on. But frankly, I lean DePaul. You know, they should have an advantage, like I said, on the rebounding department with them being 42nd in rebounding percentage in the nation and Marquette being 331st. And also, Synergy had DePaul in better than the 80th percentile in press offense, which makes sense when you got big guards like JFL and, David Jones can even handle it from the forward position. So that makes sense. I think they'll match up well in Marquette, and Marquette has Seton Hall, Villanova, and Xavier as their next 3 games on deck. So they could be looking ahead after getting kind of a good amount of back pats the last 2 games in terms of how they played. But yeah, I think DePaul is where you got to look on the betting side of things.
Yeah. And then for DFS, what I was kind of alluding to there, Gavin, was JFL up above 9K. It's an awesome game environment, and he's playing max minutes. But like we thought, the elite peripherals are starting to come back to earth a bit, right?
When they're playing better teams, and they're not playing a bunch of cans from the Northeast like St. Joe's. That makes sense. That's fine.
Yeah.
But even in garbage time, we saw him like in Nova, man. He just keeps shooting, keeps driving. Like he backdoors his way into value more than you would think. And so it feels a little bit more cashy, just given, he's going to have to 50 bomb at that price for you to really win some serious coin. And I don't know if he has that upside in this spot. But yeah, not surprising in terms of the peripherals still coming down.
Yeah, same. I think so. Outside of him, I know you're the David Jones guy, so I'll save him for you. Just wanted to bring up Jalen Terry real quick. He's down there at 4K. He's got a 40% assist rate last 3. That kind of jumps off the page at this price. Pretty low usage otherwise, and we've already talked about a couple of good guards in the low 4Ks. I think he's a good piece. Like if you wanted to game stack this for tournaments, and you didn't want to use 8 or 9K on a DePaul piece, I think Terry is your bring back there. What do you think about that? And then tell me a bit about David Jones and the Marquette pieces.
Yeah, Terry, he's only got 7 assists in the last 3 games. So to give you a sense of what 40% of the assist rate looks like, that's kind of how the DePaul offense operates in terms of it being very JFL centric. David Jones, if he was 7-2, like I'd be much more interested, but he's just such a high volatile player. Like he can take 6 threes and miss them all. He can also get 4 dunks on 4 straight possessions and just start hoovering rebounds in any 4-minute stretch. Definitely more of a GPP piece, but you get to the Marquette guys, and is Omax Prosper the easiest play on the entire slate? I mean, especially the fact that you can slot him in the guard spot, given kind of his at least mid-20s absolute minute floor the last 4 games, and having some rebounding and defensive upside and also scoring. Now, he's not going to have as easy of a matchup when he's going against the interior of DePaul, but 3.8 just feels like one of the no-brainer kind of easiest plays of the slate for me.
Yeah, well, I thought he was a pretty no-brainer play on the Saturday slate, but I'm not sure that you played him.
Yeah, well, Saturday I played Jan Zedek on night because I was in the bag by noon, so sue me.
Yeah, so I think Prosper's just kind of simply too cheap here, right? It's a great game. They have almost an 80 team total. Outside of him,
probably should be 5K minimum.
Yeah. Outside of him, Lewis had 2 fouls early in their last game, sat the rest of the half, and then they were up by 30 or 40 by the time the second half started. Mm-hmm. So they didn't really have to use him. He's up at 9.2K. That's a bit steep for me. We were loving Lewis at the 7K, 7.5 range. I think 9.2, you really take out the ceiling from him. I'm just not sure that he can beat guys like Kofi and Oscar, guys like that. And then Kolek at 7.5, just real quick. That's probably too rich for my blood. Game stack only, just because of the team total, and he has been good, man. Like 9 and 7 assists the last 2 games. They've both been blowouts. So when you look at the minutes, and this is what I want to ask you about. They've been extending the rotation a bit, but I think it might just be because of the blowouts. Like he was playing 35 ish a game before this, but it's kind of tough to pay 7.5 to figure that out on the fly, right?
100%. The best use of this game to me, and not only game stacking, but game stacking some of these value pieces. I mean, like I think Iguodaro and Cam Jones are relatively in play at low 4K. Iguodaro is kind of a light version of Prosper, and he's set into that forward spot. And we saw Cam Jones not get the minutes last game, but he's got a little bit of peripheral upside. He can definitely score and shoot the ball, especially if Morcell and Kolek aren't going to get there. I could easily see, like, if I was 150 and having a bunch of lineups with 3 value pieces from this game: Cam Jones, Iguodaro, Taylor, Prosper,
Yeah.
and kind of going from there and jamming the studs in other games, because just the game environment, I think, lends some of these value pieces a lot more floor than the others.
Yeah, it's going to raise the boats of everyone just having a game till that high, right? All right, let's move on to Iowa State and Kansas. I believe is next. Ken Palm's got this KU 77-66. He's got Iowa State at 38th in the country, Kansas 4th. Kansas obviously coming off of that tough loss at Texas Tech that we talked about earlier. Their defense isn't as elite as I think some of us expected. Why don't you talk about this game a bit before we dive into the plays?
Yeah, it's got a little bit better total than I would have thought, frankly, at 141.5. But Kansas almost laying 2 touchdowns at 13.5. Like, my first inclination has to be towards Iowa State, but we saw them barely squeak out the win against a shorthanded Tech team, and then kind of the wheels fall off late against OU, while KU was on the 8-game win streak before that collapse, versus Tech on the road. And all those games were against Ken Palm top 170 teams. But this is their 4th game in 11 days against the second in a row kind of meat grinder deep. I would say the only other meat grinder defense in the Big 12 other than Texas Tech, which is Iowa State. But, like I said, they've lost kind of 2 of their last 3, so it's just a tough spot. But 13.5 points, man, even if Iowa State doesn't get kind of the offense that they need, I feel like they can slow down Kansas a little bit.
Yeah. I think if I were to look at anything here, maybe like a first half, KU's going to come out pissed off here. We have a question for you from in the chat, Gavin. Barrick's asking if he can trust Hunter here. Hunter, I believe, is at 5.3K. We saw him up above 6K earlier in the year. What do you think about Hunter in a pace-up spot here at Kansas?
It is a pace-up, and it looks interesting at that price, and he probably gives you a good floor. But a couple of things that I noted was that, KU is 49th in defensive turnover percentage, and Tyrese has been known to cough it up a little bit from time to time. They're also 76th in offensive turnover percentage, KU. So, and he's relatively reliant on steals given his lack of rebounds. And I don't know if he has the scoring upside of Brockington, but it feels a little bit more cash than slate breaking play, even in a pace up. But he's also one of those, highly touted freshmen who, if they get going early, can ride confidence and crush in the game. I definitely looked at him and I was like, wow, that's pretty low price with the pace up and a softer perimeter defense from Kansas than we expect. But I worry about kind of a couple of those factors with him in this game.
Yeah, same. You got a freshman going to Kansas, one of the toughest places to play in the country, Fog Allen. I don't know. It would be tough for me. Don't have projections yet, but I'd say he probably projects decently. But Man, there's some intangibles about this game that you have to take into account, right? I think he's probably the only person in consideration on Iowa State because you got Brock just priced kind of out of play here. I think, even though he has been awesome, nearly 9K for him on the road at Fog. You would have to be playing him over a Kofi or an Oscar, guys like that. Do you agree with that there before we move on to Kansas?
Yeah, Iowa State in the 5 games that they've played top 75 teams, 4 times he's kind of been right around 30 fantasy points. The other was Iowa where he threw up a 50 bomb on 29 and 10. It was 11 to 14 from the field. So, the 2 seasons before this, he was below 28% from 3 both years. And this year he's in the top 250 in the nation in 3-point percentage at 41%. I think he has to see some aggression. But I also love the ability to slot in a potential double-double at the guard spot just because those guys are so few and far in between and tend to be a little bit more shot volume and scoring reliant. But, yeah, at this price in the context of the slate, it's probably at best one that you just match the field so he doesn't burn you in spots.
Yeah, so speaking of guards that can double-double, why don't we move to Kansas? You've got Christian Brown at that same price, and Agbaji's price is just slowly coming down. I wish that they would price him where you could consider him because he's a fun guy to roster, right? Shot rate almost 25%, but the peripherals are just kind of lacking for a guy in the 8Ks. Personally, we saw Remy with the knee brace on Saturday, and his minutes were really limited. I wish that they would just kind of rest him for a week or two, Gavin. But what we saw with that was Jalen Wilson finally played 32 minutes. This is what I was going to bring up with Barrick's question. Like, I don't think I want to play Hunter at the same price as Jalen Wilson if I know he's starting and playing 30 plus minutes at home here. What do you think overall about the Kansas pieces for DFS?
I think Tyrese might give you a little bit better floor than Jalen Wilson, but I don't think he has anywhere near the access to the kind of double ceiling that Jalen Wilson does have in this game. Like, he's much more of a quick-footed big that provides guys like Condit and Eliaj Kunch, like, real tough issues, at least in terms of matching up on the offensive end. And if Enaruna is not going to see the minutes, then Wilson's going to be a matchup issue for them versus someone like a McCormick. I think he's definitely interesting in somebody that when I'm 150 and I'm probably at least 2x over the field, if not more, at that price range, given if he starts and we expect him to see the minutes.
I mean, just 2 games ago, he had 15 boards in 26 minutes. So,
and then he only has 2 boards last game and scores. It feels like he's due to put one of them together. But
yeah, right. We have a question in chat. Is Big Dick Dave ever going to be good again, Gavin? What do you think?
Yeah, once a month.
Yeah, just like last year, right? It'll be on a random Wednesday or Thursday slate. He'll play 22 minutes and grab 19 rebounds
against a brutal interior on the road against Oklahoma State in 23 minutes and just dump on the whole slate. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
So be it.
Let's move on to a better game here. 2 really interesting teams this season. I think that you called one of them in our preview show. We've got Miami at Florida State. Some particulars here. Ken Palm's got Florida State 79-73. He's got Miami at 82nd still, and Florida State at 46 in his rankings. Miami obviously coming off the massive win at Cameron on Saturday night. That was a fun game. They're 5-0 in the ACC. They've won 9 games in a row. Pretty clear letdown spot here, you'd think. I'll let you talk about the overall game first, though.
Yeah, it's one that we're going to have to consider. 150 total. Florida State laying 6.5 at home, man. I thought that for sure we would see some Miami money after starting 5-0 in the ACC and beating Duke in Cameron. They had 76 points versus Duke in that spot, but before then scored 88, 92, and 91 in ACC play. I mean, they're absolutely scoring. They've found some great success with kind of this guard heavy lineup where you have Chuck Moore and McGusty, both guys who feel like they're ninth year seniors, paired up with a guy in Isaiah Wong who can be explosive on any given point. And it's like one of those three guys is going to go off at least. And if two of them go off, then they got a chance to beat anybody on any given night. And it makes me a little bit nervous given, their top 10 in turnover percentage on the offensive end because they have that guard-centric heavy look in terms of a team in Florida State that's going to need to turn you over. But I wanted to take Florida State in this spot, but I was shocked, even with Ken Palm having it at 79-73. The computer and the analytics numbers just don't favor Miami as much as their 5-0 start would suggest in ACC play.
Yeah, and I think a big reason for that is their defensive numbers, right? So Miami, they're horrible on the glass for one. So they're 301st in offensive rebound percentage, 262nd defensive rebound percentage. They're getting demolished on the glass in ACC play. I think they're last in the ACC in both of those. They're really getting by, and you saw it in the Duke game. They're just forcing a ton of turnovers. I think Cuck Moore had 7 steals, something like that. But Miami is 313th in defensive effective field goal percentage. I mean, that is horrible. You usually see. You don't ever see Power 5 teams with an effective field goal percentage defense that low. So yeah, I mean they're clearly due for some regression, but they're scoring the shit out of the ball right now. They're turning teams over just enough, and they're scoring well enough that they're just outscoring teams. Like their last 4, right? They scored 91 on NC State, but gave up 83. They beat Wake 92-84, Syracuse 88-87, and then that Duke game was in the high 70s. So yeah,
they look kind of like Bama.
I know, and yeah, they do.
Let me add a couple things real quick here. So yeah. I mean, when you look at Evan Mia, right? Miami is playing almost all of their games in the high 60s or 70 plus possessions. We've seen FSU flex their tempo all the way up into the high 70s, but typically they're playing high 60s or 70-ish as well. I mean, if your projections have this for less than 68 possessions, they're incorrect and you need to redo them. Like there's going to be some fireworks in this game, but you look at Miami's win streak, it's like of the 9 games that they've won in a row, they've had 3 games where they've given up worse than 40% from 3 on the defensive end, 6 games where they've given up worse than a 30% offensive rebounding rate on the defensive end, and 5 games where they haven't rebounded on the offensive end at 20%. Like they just feel like they have 9 lives, and I was looking to play against them, but it's like it's 6. My God, it's brutal.
Well, also the issue, right, is you were low on this Florida State team coming in. That looks to be a good call. It's just not like a vintage Leonard Hamilton team. They're not suffocating defensively. They're kind of also thriving on turnovers. They're top 20 in defensive turnover percentage, and they're short, or they're forcing teams to shoot a bunch of threes. I think 44% opponent 3-point attempts. So yeah, I mean, their offense has struggled too. They're dead last, Gavin, in offensive effective field goal percentage in ACC play, and dead last in 3-point percentage.
And they don't have the trio of Balsa Koprivica, of Scotty Barnes, and Raekwon Gray to be complete defensive stoppers. This is not the same Florida State team, and I've had to remind myself multiple times this year that we cannot be afraid of this defense like we were last year. It is not the same defense.
Yep. So let's kind of turn that into the DFS talk. Let's start with the Miami side. Pretty condensed minutes. You saw McGusty, Wong, Moore, and Jordan Miller all play 32 plus. Wardenberg has played 29 each in his 2 games. I know you love that dude. So talk to me a bit about that core 5 for Miami here.
Yeah, man, I haven't played much McGusty up until now, and now these 9K with his rebounding rate falling off, it's hard to get to. But really, when you look at Miami, it comes down to McGusty, Wong, or Chuck Moore, and I'm not playing Chuck Moore. Like if he scores 18 points again and gets 7 steals and just shits on my chest, I will welcome that Cleveland steamer with open arms. So be it. If he does it again, 35 fantasy points, 3 straight games, I'm just going to have to fade it when he's still the third, scoring guard of that group. We saw Wong do us pretty dirty a couple nights ago, but he still kind of got there in garbage time, even like fighting foul trouble and deferring to the other 2 guys. I'm pretty interested in Wong in a GPP perspective. I'm going to have the heebie-jeebies about putting him in for a main lineup. But Wardenberg is certainly in play. The Miller price up makes me a little bit nervous, but the minutes in the shot floor has been there, so he's got to at least be considered and in play. 10 steals
like
in the last 3 games. I don't know how sustainable that is, but yeah. And then you get down to my boy Wardenberg. He's kind of like a Matt Cross, like will rebound a little bit, can shoot from the outside, and it's kind of a switchable piece. But 4.8 at a good pace, I'm okay to Wardenberg as well.
Yeah, so 72 team total here. I think I'm a sucker for Wong. He was a core play for me 2 games ago and just got off to that super slow start and just really didn't get into the flow of the game. Good to see him bounce back and take 17 shots against Duke, Gavin. His peripherals aren't awesome, but I think in a high-scoring game, I think he can do pretty well here. I do like Jordan Miller at 6'2". I like him more than Charlie Moore. I just like the peripherals there, and I think he's a good player. He was a George Mason transfer, I believe.
Yeah, 6'7". He's got some length.
Yeah. So I think those are my 2 favorite players on Miami. This is just a really good tournament game just because there's a lot of options. Game stack game, sorry. And then that's before we even go to the Florida State side.
And there's going to be a lot of landmines in this game too.
Yeah. So, but there are going to be guys who get there and absolutely crush. So I'll talk a bit about Florida State first. Their last 3 games, they've won 2 and they got blown out once. We've seen Caleb Mills kind of take over as we thought that he would to start the year, but he didn't. But now the last 3, his minutes seem to be solid. 22% shot rate. The peripherals lag a bit, but he's priced in a spot where I think Florida State's gonna score pretty easily here, and Mills is the kind of guy who can really go off in a game environment like this. So I think he's my favorite play, followed by Matt Cleveland, the freshman, who we've seen in their last 2 close-ish games play 27 minutes each. Actually has the second highest usage on the team, Gavin, behind Mills. His peripherals are okay. I just like seeing him at that 4.6 price just because I think there are going to be so many, like, not clear values, but better values than him. And I think that he would be a good pivot, if you're stacking up this game. What do you think overall about the Florida State guys? I see that Raekwon Evans is cheap too.
Yeah, I think we kind of associate Florida State with length and being a super long team. Versus Miami, I see them running much more of a guard-heavy approach, obviously to counteract kind of the guard-centric nature of Miami. But so it probably removes a lot of the bigs from the Florida State equation. Like Malik Osborne just doesn't get the rebounding upside nor the shot volume that you need. I think you have to look at Matt Cleveland. I'm pretty interested in Matt Cleveland. One of these freshmen that I want to be early on freshmen, the back half of the year, who seem to be kind of fitting into their role and doing well. And we've seen the minute uptick, the last 3, the shots coming along. I think he has some peripheral upside, better than kind of, I guess he's shown it last 3 games, but another one of these like really highly touted guys who was even more so of, we don't know if he'll do well at the college level, but he's definitely going to be an NBA guy, and he is starting to do well at the college level. So I'll go Cleveland over Evans. I mean, Evans is just disgusting. Like, he had the poor guy had, I think it was the death of his brother a while back, but just has not been able to get back into the flow of the offense since then. It's just looked like a different guy this year, where at least he was kind of a serviceable shooter last year.
Yep, agreed. Well, let's move on since we're taking a good amount of time here. Ole Miss at Texas A&M. Here is the next game. Ken Palm's got it A&M 69-64, so a little bit of a slower tempo game here. He's got Ole Miss 92nd in his rankings, Texas A&M 66th in his rankings. What do you got overall quickly on this game, Gavin?
Yeah, meat grinder, 133.5 total. Texas A&M favored by 4. The thing about these teams you got to understand is it's two kind of weird, different defenses. Buzz Williams has that kind of chaos-inducing, heavy defensive rotation, and Ole Miss runs that kind of 1-3-1 amoeba zone that we saw trip up Tennessee in spots. But yeah, probably not going to be one that we're too excited on the DFS side. But I think looking at the under is a relatively good lean that I have considering on this card. I'm definitely looking at that spot.
Yeah, one thing I saw when I was writing up notes for this game, Gavin, if you're betting on A&M this year, and we saw it, I think I took them once earlier this year. They're one of the worst free throw shooting teams in the country. They're 347th. So keep that in mind. If you're betting them,
-6 is right in that late free throw corridor too.
Yep. So that's something to keep in mind if you're betting on A&M with a tight spread. The last note for me for the game, A&M horrible on the defensive glass, 302nd and 14th out of 14 in SEC play. Going over to the DFS side, we saw Jarkarl Joyner missed the last 2 games, and with that, Ole Miss has really condensed their rotation, which has been nice to see. Ruffin, the freshman, had a nice bounce back game on Saturday. We played him last Wednesday, I believe, and he got into early foul trouble. Just didn't really get into the flow of that game. But man, he looked good on Saturday, Gavin. I'm not sure if you saw much of that game or the highlights, but I think he had 8 assists. I don't like him as much on the road here. They're coming off the big win against their rival, but there's some cheap pieces. Matt Morrell had how many points last game? He had a bomb game. They're just some cheap pieces, even for a shitty game. Yeah, Matt Morrell, Gavin, was 10 of 11 from the field, scored 31 actual points. He's 3.8 on this slate.
That's like me playing horse in my driveway.
Yeah, wouldn't expect anything like that, but I expect him to project well. Brakefield is a floor type of player in his own right. Not much usage or ceiling. He's the due transfer, but I guess what I'm trying to say is they're basically playing 5.5 guys, and they're all cheap enough where I think you have to look at them. But then you look at the implied total and you look at the context of the slate, and I'm not sure if anyone becomes a preferred play. What do you think?
I think agreed. I mean, shoot, if Nasir Brooks is going to play like that, god damn, if the guy's got major double upside at 6'4", in a game where there's going to be a lot of clanks, potentially he comes into play. But I was actually kind of looking back towards Ty Fagan. Like he got there as chalk last slate, even with 3 points and some good peripherals. So 4-2, I don't hate it. I think there's probably better plays at that price point on the slate, but I think he has to be mixed into a player pool for anybody MME in.
Yeah, same. I think that there are just a lot of good, solid floor plays on this team just because they're playing so many minutes and no one really dominates the usage.
And Henry Coleman smashed last 2 times out.
Yeah, besides maybe Ruffin. I think that we could see Ruffin not be 5-5 for long, but I don't think he's going to be a preferred play on the road here in a 130 total.
Against a tough D. Are we expecting Joyner to play?
No, so he kind of, so the reason he played 6 minutes, they kind of put him on the floor at random spots, and he was just kind of, it felt like he was just kind of testing it out. And
yeah, it's a back. It's not a good injury you want to be messing with either.
yeah, so I think Murrell will be popular. He just has no peripherals, so he's going to have to score and could completely bury you in a game if they score like 58 points here. Let's move on to A&M, which should be quick because Buzz loves playing his 12-man rotation. We've seen Marcus Williams actually play the most minutes recently at 6'9". I don't think that he's in play here for me. Boots Radford has played 32 in 2 out of the last 3 games. I have a soft spot for Boots being a tech guy. He's at 4.7. It is just crazy seeing him at that price, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then Henry
transfer to play 24 minutes a game. You hate to see it.
Yeah. And then Henry Coleman is a good tournament option. I think he's okay here, Gavin, because I think Ole Miss is a big enough team where they're going to need Coleman's size. Just know that he is a heavy fouler. So, if he doesn't foul, he should play 25 to 30 here and do really well for that price. He'll probably project well. Just know that there is massive foul risk because he is a complete dipshit. What do you think about A&M?
That's the nice way to put Coleman. But yeah, I think Coleman is probably still my favorite play of the game, followed by, maybe you mix in a little bit of Quentin Jackson because he's got some of maybe the only shooting upside on the team.
Yeah, I think that's good enough for this game. A couple of floor pieces and maybe some bad chalk in Morale. We'll have to think about that more, because if he is going to play 37 minutes at 3.8, he's going to project very, very well. Moving on, we got Illinois at Nebraska. Ken Palm's got it 83-69 Illini. He's got them 11th in his rankings, and Nebraska 155th. Nebraska just really falling apart here in conference play. They're 6-10 right now, 236 in defensive effective field goal percentage, Gavin. Illinois has basically shut off the paint. So I think this is going to be a spot where Nebraska is going to get frustrated. They're going to jack up a ton of threes. Nebraska is a terrible rebounding team. They're 343rd in offensive rebounding percentage, 312th in defensive rebounding percentage, and they're giving up 46% from 3 in conference play. I mean, this is just a tough spot. What do you think overall about the game?
Phenomenal game environment for DFS. Looks like the second best game of the slate in terms of 150.5 total, and Illinois laying 13.5 with the best team total on the slate. You talked about how bad Nebraska has been. I mean, they've lost 8 of their last 9 games, only beating Kennesaw State at home, and they just got drubbed by Rutgers at the rack last game. Like, it was bad. Nebraska's not favored by Ken Palm in one game the rest of the season. Like,
Jesus.
It's hard to get a sense of where these guys are at, like, mentally.
Yeah.
You got Illinois is 5th in adjusted shot quality, Nebraska 92nd. You alluded to rebounding. Illinois, second best rebounding percentage. This is offensive and defensive in the country. Nebraska 352nd. Like, it's just a really, really bad matchup for Nebraska, and in a spot where if you told me Nebraska starts rolling over and dying after getting down early, I would not be surprised at this point of the season. Led by a guy in Verge who's only starting to get above 20 minutes last couple games, and a freshman in Bryce McGowan who, if he's not hitting shots, can almost shoot your way out of a game.
Okay, so why don't we talk about it this way? We both think that Illinois plays really well here. Their implied total is 82. Kofi is 9.6. Kofi with the 26% shot and 36% rebound rate last 3, Gavin. He's obviously going to destroy when he's on the court. If Nebraska can keep this game within 20, I think Kofi's live for like 60 plus here. But the issue is, will they? We've seen Illinois be totally fine with playing Coleman Hawkins, 20 minutes or so, especially if they're up. But then I come back to, it is a conference game. So Kofi's played 29, 24, and 28 their last 3 games.
Hasn't touched 30 since the Arizona game.
They've won those games by 25, 23, and 12. So they've kind of played in this type of spread that we think is going to happen. So I don't want to I don't want to double count, the blowout factor here. What are your just overall thoughts? I'm just trying to talk my way through it.
I mean, like you want another stat that leads to the blowout, like Nebraska 3-point defense last 3 games, 34-69, 49% versus the Illinois shooters, like on the outside. I mean, it's a horrible spot. And the thing is, like, Kofi is going to project at just a different level because of the rates and what he's doing within the minutes that he's getting. Like, if he put up 30 plus minutes in any of those games that he played, we might have seen a 70. Like,
yeah,
he's the most unguardable player on the offensive end in the post in the country, bar none. It's not even a discussion. Like, and we saw him in foul trouble, I think, at the beginning of the Maryland game, right?
Yeah. Hey, he's got a lot of mine on him.
He gets dunked on by Julian Reese in the start of the second half, and you see a look on his face. And from then, it felt like he dunked the next 6 plays. It was absurd. Yeah. And Nebraska just doesn't have anybody to stop him on the interior. They don't have any sort of perimeter defense to stop Trent Frazier, to stop Alonzo Plummer, who I guess I have to accept as one of the better shooters in the country. God forbid, like DeMonte Williams makes a couple. It's hard to see this. I want to try to see this as Nebraska keeps it close.
Yeah, because you want to play
Kofi. Like, Kofi hasn't gotten 30 minutes and he's still gotten there, so I don't even know if he needs it.
Yeah, all right. So I think we're both in agreement on Kofi. Is there anyone else outside of Kofi in this game that you like or you think is in play?
We have to keep people in play with the game. Like, DeMonte's a floor guy. Trent Frazier's a floor guy. We saw the uptick in Granderson, but he also got the price uptick. And I'm always interested in Granderson at the guard spot when you can plug him in there with the peripheral upside he has. But I think you just have to go to, it's probably Plummer, the second best choice with the shot volume. But again, lack of ceiling. I don't know. I'm not in love with any of the Illinois pieces, so I just continuously find myself like, Kofi first man in. Let's not even overthink this pretty much.
Yeah, I think if you don't play Kofi, I do like Granderson. He didn't shoot it well last game, and I think that'll keep people off. I think he's live for 30.
You figure if Kofi doesn't get there, like Hawkins has to have some involvement in that.
Yeah. I think Granderson, though. Did I say Hawkins? I meant Granderson.
You said Granderson, but I at least need to mention that if you're not going to play Kofi, it's as much a leverage thing as anything. And if he doesn't get there, who's getting there on Illinois? And it's probably Hawkins getting extended minutes, whether Kofi's in foul trouble or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I think those are 2 guys who are in play, but not core play, not like a main team play. I do like Granderson, though, to bounce back here. Awesome peripherals, and if the threes are going in, he can hit 30 plus here at 6K. I think we're all off in Nebraska here. I guess you could play a McGowan's. He's shooting 25% shot rate last 3. He's at home. He's going to have just dog defenders on him the entire game. So not sure if I want to play McGowan's here. Anything on Nebraska before we move on?
Like the only thing I want on Nebraska, like McGowan just gets a tough matchup. And you probably got to mix him in GPP because if he takes 21 shots, especially if Verge is going to play 22 minutes and he's making some, then maybe he gets there. But like, other than a Lat man mix in because they're going to need his size and switchability for a team that's top 25 and pick and roll rate. Like, other than that, I don't know how you get to Nebraska. It's like I said, a team that could be just dead and flailing and rolling over to die. Yeah.
Well, let's get to probably the worst DFS game on the slate. Oklahoma at Texas. Ken Palm's got a Texas 66-60 OU coming off the awesome comeback win over the weekend. Made me a bunch of money. Live bet them, I don't know, 4 to 6 times. That was great. Ken Palm's got them 32nd and Texas 16th in the country in his ratings. Some notes I've got here. Oklahoma is actually 4th in the country in offensive effective field goal percentage, really scoring at will inside. They will turn it over. 220 or 282nd in offensive turnover percentage. And Texas turns you over a bunch. They're 4th in the country in defensive turnover percentage, and they have been pretty stifling inside the arc. 15th in defensive 2-point percentage and 1st in Big 12 play. But they have issues, and I'll let you talk about them before we briefly touch on a couple DFS pieces because I don't think that there will be many.
OU's issues or UT's issues? I mean, there are issues everywhere in this game.
Texas. Let's talk about Texas.
We know that. Thankfully, Chris Beard is listening to the Run Peer programs, because as soon as I just opened up and lambasted him about not playing Marcus Carr and he's transferring, and boom, he plays 30 minutes, multiple games, and Texas looks relatively okay until they go in a tough spot at Oklahoma State. And being an Oklahoma State grad, I'll tell you that arena is tougher to play in the Big 12 than people think, against a team that's front court heavy with size and switchability. So it wasn't too surprising to see Texas lose. But the thing about Texas that, I would almost say that we don't need to talk about this at all from a DFS perspective, but similar to this game and the Oklahoma State West Virginia game, all these guys are sub 7.5. So is there anybody at least worth discussing on the DFS side in this game, regardless of poor game environment?
So I'm not playing anyone on OU. I know that. On an 11-game slate, I'm not going to play anyone against Texas probably the entire season. They're, I think, 3rd slowest team in the country, elite defensively, especially inside. And that's how OU scores. They don't have really any good shooters or any above average shooters, I would say. And so on the Texas side, you can see that they really were hurt by the loss of Trey Mitchell. We saw that he's going to be out tomorrow as well. If Marcus Carr was cheaper, I would play him here. It's just an awesome bounce back spot at home. But maybe we just wait until they play a team with a worse defense, right? Maybe they struggle here, and then they've got at Iowa State and then home against Kansas State. So next Tuesday is when we'll be playing some Texas guys, I bet. But here, Jones comes back. He kind of muddles the guard rotation a bit more. Ramey's really only shooting. I don't know. I mean, Dessou I would play if he was cheaper. It just, everyone that I want to play is, 1,000 more than I want them to be just because of the shitty game. Is that kind of where you're at on the Texas guys?
Yeah, for the most part. Ramey's got some decent rates, and even with Andrew Jones coming back, we saw him play a good amount and didn't quite have the shot volume of the previous two. But boy, if you can't play Christian Bishop right here as a remember when I said Enaruna, the disgusting 3-condom GPP mix-in that you need? I know that Bishop only played 15 minutes against Oklahoma State. Okay. Dessou, I love Dessou. Like, super stud. I said would probably change the look of this UT team, but he doesn't have the foot speed and the switchability needed to guard Tanner Groves in space and what Porter Moser is going to drop. And I think, God, this has to be the spot where Christian Bishop isn't just a cast off in the lineup. And I just want to kind of mix him in a little bit as that weird, disgusting gut call.
The gut call of the day.
The weird,
Christian
disgusting
Bishop
gut call. Yeah.
Plays more than, because if he plays more than 15 minutes, he's definitely going to pay off that price. All right, we've spent enough time on this game.
Let's get to the pants off game.
Yeah. So speaking of that, we got Auburn at Alabama. lots to talk about here on both sides. Ken Palm's got it 79-78 Bama. Whew, man, Auburn 7th in Ken Palm rankings, Bama 17th. Bama coming off just the horrendous performance at Mizzou on Saturday, giving up, what was it, 92 in regulation to Kobe Brown and company. And Auburn just, ho-hum, just continues to pretty much plaster teams. I mean, that Florida game, they won by 12, but it didn't seem like it was that close. They crushed South Carolina, beat the shit out of LSU. And those are their 3 games to start conference play. What are your overall notes on the game? And then we can talk about Bama as a whole.
Man, Auburn, 11 games in a row, 9 by double digits, like absolute flavor of the month in college basketball. They've had 4 true road games. 3 of them were relatively unimpressive in terms of winning by 6 at South Florida, winning by 4 at St. Louis. And then, they ended up spacing out the South Carolina game 81-66, but it was a little bit closer than that. But it's like, what's wrong with Bama, man? I think is what this game comes down to in and of itself and what you think of Bama, right? Bama, I mean, you talk about transition defense point per possession, 268th in a team that wants to try and play up and down with tempo, with pace. Auburn, top 50 in percentage of offensive plays in transition. So we know Auburn is going to push it right back at him. Bama, 277th in defensive catch and shoot 3-point percentage. Like, we know Jabari's going to be chucking from deep, and it's a tough spot. Like, they're not forcing turnovers. They're 250th in defensive turnover percentage, which a lot of times was able to initiate their offense last year, whether it was like a Herb Jones creating stuff on the defensive end, but also giving up too many second chance points against other teams, like 244th.
Yeah, they're getting killed on the boards, man.
Defensive offensive rebound rate, brutal. Now, it's weird because they're so bad on the defensive end for the offensive rebounding rate. They're better on the offensive end. But like the main stat that it comes down to for me in this game, and everybody knows we are the biggest Bama fucking lovers. I'm in LA and I like Bama. I'm supposed to hate Bama. Bama is number 1 in the nation in shots that they take either at the rim or from the 3-point line. 95% of their shots either at the rim or at the
That is absurd.
Versus an Auburn super long perimeter team, minus the 2 midgets, obviously, that they rotate out, but also a team leading the nation in block rate, Walker Kessler. Like, Auburn is first in near proximity defensive field goal percentage. And so if they don't get Walker Kessler in foul trouble, then it basically comes down to, does Bama shoot 35% from 3 at this game? Because if they don't, it hurts me to say, but they're probably dead men walking in this spot. It's a tough stylistic matchup for them.
Yeah, it is. And in their three conference games, they're shooting 28% from 3. And I mean, you saw it. They had to scratch and claw to beat Tennessee, which they shouldn't have had to at home. They did have the nice Florida win on the road. They shot 28% from 3 there, but they were just uber efficient besides that, and I'm pretty sure they shot a bunch of free throws. But I mean, I hate to say it, but like, Auburn shouldn't be favored, or I mean, Bama should not be favored in this game. It's just, I guess it's a good situational spot coming off the loss. You have to think Oates is just on their asses about losing to fucking Missouri. And Auburn riding high. They have not lost since that, was it the triple overtime or double overtime?
Yeah, where UConn was like 15 of 26 from 3. I mean, it took a ridiculous, anomalic 3-point effort.
I've got Auburn championship futures. I think they're going to end up being a 1 seed. Man, it pains me I'll probably bet Auburn here, which is, I don't bet against Bama basketball very often. I mean, we've been saying it for over a year now, and it's even more pronounced this year. Bama gets absolutely crushed by athletic bigs, and Auburn's got two of the top, 6 of them in the country.
Two of the best like DFS guys. I mean, shoot.
All right, so let's move over to that side of it. So Auburn, we've got 9K Walker Kessler. This guy was 5'5" over Thanksgiving break. Actually, maybe over Christmas break. Implied team total of 79. Jabari's at 8'3". Flanagan came back last game and played 20 minutes. My issue with Auburn is that it's kind of the same issue I have with Baylor guys, right? They're going to play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 guys 20-plus minutes, right? They got Smith, KD, Green, Kessler, Jalen, Cambridge, Jasper, and Flanagan are all going to play 20-plus, which really kills the minute ceiling of anyone on the team. And, if you look at it in a spreadsheet, you can see, like, Kessler hasn't played 30, Jabari hasn't played 30 in a while, which, when you're paying 8.3 and 9K for these guys, it makes it kind of tough, to play them over guys who are going to play 35 minutes with awesome usage. But the game is great. Both Smith and Kessler obviously have huge advantages inside. Kessler, if he doesn't foul, is going to have a monster game. 28% rebound rate last 3. I think he's squarely in play, even at 9K. I want to get your thoughts on Jabari Smith here. I think pretty much, for me, the no doubt number 1 pick in the NBA draft right now. Only a 10% rebound rate last 3. You've seen the peripherals kind of fall off a bit of late. Do you think that's real? What do you think about Jabari Smith in this game here at 8.3?
Yeah, the peripheral drop off is scary with Flanagan coming back. I'm not going to lie. And I think probably hurts his floor more than his ceiling, because in any given game, like, he's only taken 3 and 2 3-point attempts respectively in his last 2 games, but he can huck up 5 in any given spot. And if he's making a couple, he's going to keep going, and Bama is going to provide opportunities to get up and down. It seems like a game that he's going to thrive in. It makes me nervous, though. And it's like, it feels like for Auburn, you pretty much have to go Jabari or Walker. And Walker Kessler is probably the biggest heartburn of the slate, because he feels like he's either going to foul out in the first 4 possessions because Nate Oates is going to say, take it right at him and get him out of the game.
Yeah.
Or
Quinn will go right at him.
They're going to take it right at him, and he's going to have 6 blocks by halftime and a double-double by the game, man. Like that. I've already passed 2 kidney stones and have a hernia thinking about what I'm going to do with this guy, but his rates have gone down. It's like, he was on that crazy block span, and now it's backed off the last couple. Man, I don't know where I'm going to end up with Walker Kessler, but it's hard not to play him in the nut matchup. Like, I've told the same thing with telling myself I'm not going to be afraid of Florida State defense. Just play bigs against Bama. Just play him and don't look. Don't look at odds. Don't worry about it. Just play him.
Yep. All right. So quickly before we go to Bama, outside of those 2, I think there are other guys in play here. Flanagan back at 5'4". KD Johnson has slipped under 5K here. Do you like either of those guys? I mean, KD, this just seems like the type of game that is just made for him, the game environment.
Yep, 100%. But the thing is, I kind of hope that KD projects relatively well so that he gets some ownership so that I don't have to play him. I don't disagree that or I guess I agree that he's a fine play in this spot, but 9 steals in the last 3 games and had to get there on 23 points last game. Like, if he doesn't get there from a scoring perspective, and it's a Wendell Green game, which he's shown us multiple times throughout the year, then it makes me a little bit nervous. I would much rather I'll take maybe a couple less minutes from Alan Flanagan with even more upside, because if he's getting better from the Achilles, and Bruce Pearl feels comfortable playing him more minutes, I'm just going to go Flanagan over KD Johnson myself every day and twice on Sunday.
Yep, I agree. I just think that they're both in play. Let's talk about Bama real quick. The issue with Bama is the issue we've had with them the entire season for DFS. They've got three guys that on any given game can be the guy, and there isn't really a rhyme or reason as to who's going to go off. Quinn goes off sometimes. Keon will have his games and then frustrate at other times, and Shaq the same. The one thing I will say, Shaq's got the best minutes. He's played 36 plus in three straight. And as we talked about, I don't know, 2 or 3 weeks ago, his rebound rate has cratered, which is what we figured would happen. Shaq is not a 20% rebound rate guy. Last three, his rebound rate's down to 8.5. So I think Shaq is the worst play of the three if I had to choose. Quinn the best. I just think Quinn is really coming on strong, Gavin, and I think he's getting more and more confident every single game, and he's playing a lot. He's played 32 and 33 the last couple of games. He's my favorite piece on the Bama side, besides J.D. Davison, who you see the injury that he had. He was playing 16 and then 20, played 25 last game. If J.D. Davison plays 25 in this game, he's going to do really well at 4.5K. What do you think, real quick, on Bama? And we have a couple more games after this. So,
100%. JD's in play. We talk about the Nate Oates forward merry-go-round. He has a really weird quick hook with a lot of these guys. If they're not playing good defense in a specific spot, they just won't see the floor the rest of the time. Like, that's why we saw Bediako's minutes crater after being a super usable spot against a taller Florida team. Maybe they go back to that in trying to rely on Bediako a little bit against another really tall Bama team where Mizzou is more of that kind of small 5-ball Kobe Brown look. But man, I don't disagree with anything you said in terms of kind of what the numbers dictate with the Bama guards. But man, Shackelford last 4 games, 3 of 8, 3 of 8, 2 of 10, 4 of 11 from 3. This just weird gut tickle just tells me that this could be the 5 of 8, 5 of 9 that kind of gets him going a little bit. So I don't know. Is that It's more anecdotal than evidence back, but that's kind of where I stand, at least on the Bama guys.
No, yeah. I mean, I think Shaq is due for some shooting regression. I think so is Quinn. The only issue with Shaq is he basically has to, right? Because he's not pulling down 8, 9 rebounds a game like he was earlier this year. So for me, it's Quinn, it's Davison. Gurley, after the game where he fouled out in 6 minutes, got back to 25 there in the last game. I guess you could use him. More of like a game stack guy, I think, though, Gavin, for me. We'll move on to a much worse game. We've got Oklahoma State coming off the big win on Saturday against Texas at West Virginia. Ken Palm's got a 68-64. Oklahoma State 45th at Ken Palm. West Virginia 41st at Ken Palm. Do you have any game notes here?
Not a ton of game notes. For my money, I think this could be equally as bad from a DFS perspective as the Texas game. I already bet the under 134 a pretty good amount, just with West Virginia being a super slow team. Oklahoma State, like you said, paces up and has a lot of chaotic, hectic games. But going to Morgantown, kind of getting the slowest version of Bob Huggins in 20 years, I took the under for a good portion of that, but don't have a ton of the DFS side of things.
Yeah, that note that he was referencing. So Oklahoma State plays fast, but they turn it over a ton. They're 301st in offensive turnover percentage, but they also force a ton of turnovers. This is a team that's got like a bunch of like lanky athletes, not great ball handlers, but they're long and they get in passing lanes. So yeah, 12th in defensive turnover percentage. So just a lot of sloppy games, sloppy play. And West Virginia is 8th in defensive turnover percentage. So, yeah, I mean, this is going to be an ugly one. West Virginia's weak on the defensive glass, or 325th, which kind of shocked me. But moving to DFS, Oklahoma State is a bit maddening with their rotations. Ice is basically the only guy who gets super consistent minutes. I wish Avery Anderson did because I think that you could play him here. He's at 5'4", Gavin, and he's a guy that we were really high on coming into the year. I think he would be my favorite play if I was going to go to someone on Oklahoma State. What do you think?
Yeah, I think I played. I think I played Avery Anderson one slate when he was like 4 point something K, but this is just not a team I typically ever get to. Um, it just feels like a very much just like piss in the wind and see where it lands. I have no idea who's going to go off on any given point for this team. The guards might give you a little bit better floor than the forwards who play 20 minutes, but it's like you're also paying 6K for their top two guys and 5.4 for Avery Anderson. So in the context of this slate and what I see as potentially the grossest game on the slate, there's not a chance in hell I play one Oklahoma State guy if I was playing 300 lineups, much less 150.
I think there are guys that you could pick off. I would definitely limit to one per team. I would play a little bit of Anderson, and Musa Cisse under 5. I think's got some block rebound upside for that price. But we'll move on to West Virginia real quick. Taz, we saw come back, played 31 minutes, kind of a passive role. Gavin, I would expect him to continue to improve, to play more and to play more aggressive. He didn't really have to in that game against K-State because Sean McNeil was just playing so well. I think McNeil is fine. I don't ever play him, but you're going to get a 20% shot rate with no peripherals. I think he's okay at 5K. And then I just wanted to mention Malik Curry left their last game with an injury. This is one of the last tips of the night. I don't think he's going to play here. It would be nice to get some early Rothstein news because Kedrian Johnson saw a pretty big increase in minutes. So he usually plays 22, 24. He played 30 last game, and is going to start a point guard and play a bunch here with a pretty good assist rate, 30% at 4K. So any thoughts there? I think we've actually touched on a bunch of plays in the 4K range on this slate.
Yeah, and I was being a little bit dramatic with Oklahoma State because Keelan Boone for 3.4. Okay, fine, maybe I'm a little bit interested, but on the West Virginia side, it's like Taz isn't putting up the 23 points that he's needed to at least return value the last couple games, and it's another one where if Taz and Sean McNeil have a little bit of issues on the wing with some of the length of Oklahoma State at the forward spot, then Kedrian he's a little bit interesting. I'm not going to lie, especially if we're worried about someone like Mintz's, peripherals, where Kedrian is pretty much mostly peripherals, and if we get a little bit of scoring out of him, then we're sitting pretty. He's in the mix for me more than you would probably think in a horrible game environment. Obviously, pending the Malik Curry injury news, which is going to make it difficult at the last tip.
Yeah, so hopefully we get that early, so we're able to make a call before the slate. Last game of the slate, a pretty good real life game, I think. Providence heads to Creighton. Ken Palm's got it Creighton 69-67, projected close. He's got Providence as the 50th ranked team and Creighton at 56. So Ken Palm much lower than national rankers on Providence after their hot start. What do you think overall about the game?
Yeah, worse total than I would have thought. It was even worse than the Oklahoma State West Virginia at 133, and I took a small piece of this over. You got two relatively efficient teams. I think that match up pretty well. Creighton off the just epic bed shitting against at Nova when Nova had the revenge in a cool off game. But they've looked good in some spots, like against the first game against Villanova, against BYU, against Marquette. Providence bounced back against St. John's after, getting drubbed by Marquette, but they were certainly due for a cool off game after being, the most quad one wins kind of flavor of the month for a while there. But, I think it's when I look at a lot of stats, whether I look at shot quality stats, whether I look at kind of Evan Mia pace and efficiency stats, these teams just line up so similarly in so many regards. It's really hard to have a good sense of where I want to be on the side, but certainly at least lean a little bit to the over.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised too at the total. But if you look, I mean, Creighton just playing slower than we expected, right? So
And
they're
they're tough
200.
on the interior, man. They got more length than you'd expect too.
Yeah, so Providence 279th in tempo, Creighton 245th. So this is a slower game. Both teams top 35 in defensive effective field goal percentage. Creighton turns it over a bunch, 290th, and they can't shoot 294th from three. Um, they in Big East play so far, Gavin. They're last in both offensive and defensive turnover percentage. So that'll help the Providence guards a bit. And then, like you mentioned, Creighton very very tough inside, 13th in defensive 2-point percentage, which Kalkbrenner kind of emerging as a star forward. That makes perfect sense. Of course, I played him in the Nova game where he did nothing. So that was great after I missed all of his just shit kicking games. So let's move over to DFS. This being the last tip of the night. Providence, we had Big Nate come through for us on Saturday at 6'3", I believe he was. He's only 6'7" here. Much tougher matchup.
Much slower
Um,
matchup.
Slower matchup. 25% rebound rate. That's what I'm talking about, Nate. That's what we needed, Gavin. I mean, that's what he's been missing for 2 years. Is he was a big puss and would grab 4 rebounds a game. At his size, obviously unacceptable. But hopefully hopefully this is a trend and not a blip, because we are fans of Big Nate. So, what do you think about the Providence side here? I think Mania might be in play too.
Yeah, he has to be, and it kind of feels more cash than GPP. He's got some good rebounding upside, but like it's weird because you got Providence has Nate Watson, Creighton has Kalkbrenner. Providence has Horkler, who's more of a perimeter move. He's got some decent foot speed, but is lethal from the 3-point line as well as inside the arc. Same kind of thing with Hawkins. Like we said, way tougher, way different game environment for Nate in this spot. And so it makes me feel like while he still might have the good floor because of the shot rate, that I don't know if he obviously doesn't have anywhere near the ceiling of what he did at the St. John's game, but you got to at least mix him in. I just, for some reason, like I said last stream, I just don't play Noah Horkler, and sometimes he poos on me and sometimes he doesn't, but I just don't think he's that great of a play. We got to, I guess, discuss the guards if Reeves is going to be out. That finger was kind of funky the last game where people said, yep, he's going to play. And then, 2 minutes after lock, we get the news that he's out. So another one that's going to be kind of sketchy down on the wire. But just to correct, you said last tip, we do have, this is one of the 3 games that tips at 6 p.m. Pacific. So,
Right.
maybe it gives you a little bit more flexibility where you're not pinned down on the only standalone hammer, but yeah, still something to keep in mind too with injury news penny with AJ Reeves.
Yeah, I think Mania is in play. I mean, just because of the sheer time he's on the court, right? He's got 37, 38, 40 minutes last 3. Not a ceiling play by any stretch, but 25% rebound rate. At least Vegas thinks that there's going to be a bunch of misses in this game. It's a tough. I don't know. I thought I was going to like this game more, didn't you?
I did. I saw the total and I was like, whoa, that just feels. But
yeah,
I think that Providence is due for a little bit of shooting regression. I mean, it's also Providence's 4th game in 11 days, Creighton's 3rd in 11, and Providence is off their highest possession game of the season versus St. John's as a team reliant on shot making, being 6th in the nation in shot making. Princeton, like of everybody,
yeah.
relying on shot making from the mid range and getting to the line on the road, So
Yeah.
I'm going to lean Creighton a little bit. I thought that total was just light, but I could see how it doesn't get there.
Yeah. All right. So just real quick, is there anyone on the Creighton side that interests you before we talk about a couple of our favorite plays and then get out of here?
Honestly, not really. And it's like, and then Kalkbrenner, I would kind of chuck out. You see a lot of the box scores. I would just chuck out the box score from that Creighton game. Like, I still think Kalkbrenner has that kind of 50-point upside that Hawkins doesn't have, given the defensive, placement that he has within their sets. But I don't know. I'm getting the weird stomach tinglies that this is where Kaluma comes alive a little bit at 3-9, but that doesn't mean
Yeah.
jam him into your main line. That means B2X on him to the field when he's going to be less than 5%.
I can't believe that we just talked about a Creighton game. You didn't bring up Baby Nemhard. That's your guy.
Well, we know what we got from Baby Nemhard. Just chalk up 20 to 27 points at mid 5K. You know what you got from him. He's cash. He's not GPP. I love him.
Yeah. All right. Well, that is the 11 game slate. We went about an hour and a half here, which was my goal at least. Just to kind of recap, I think there are a couple of really good spend up options. I think kind of sifting through, Gavin, the 8 to 9K options are going to be interesting because I do think that there are a ton of plays in the 4K range that are very good. So and now that we've gone through it, the mid range doesn't seem as strong. On Saturday, I think we were both really high on the mid range plays. This kind of feels like a stars and scrubs build to me. What do you think overall before we get out of here?
Yeah, there's I think plenty of budget options whether you want to look guard forward. I mean, I think we talked about 5 or 6 where we were pretty strong on in terms of sub 4.5K. So we'll call it the Barrick special slate. Jam all the studs and find a couple scrubs and try to win all the bacon.
Yeah. All right. Well, since this was a free show, I'll mention. So every day at Run Pure, I do a playbook and core plays. The playbook basically outlines my thought on every relevant player of the slate, gives some game context and just overall thoughts. And then core plays are basically the 3 to 4 plays that I wouldn't make a lineup without for that slate. You can check us out at runpuresports.com. We have a Discord that is pretty active, and I like all the guys in there. So that's always fun. That's where we talk about and post any late news, lineups, which if you play college basketball, it's a huge part of it. So yeah, check us out, and I'll see everyone in Discord.